What's up, guys? Welcome to another video. Today I'm going to show you how to make a modal, so a little pop-up with vanilla JavaScript. So a modal is whenever you click a button, like for instance right here where it says read more, and then another box shows up with maybe some other content or text or images or something. So that's what's called a modal, okay? So we click the open modal button. You can see that we have JavaScript. And with our JavaScript, we're making our modal appear with its content. And we're also giving the body that little dark background that you usually see when stuff pops up on your screen. It'll usually darken everything out and then just have your modal in the center. And then you'll see over here that we have a scroll bar. I added some height to the body, and I made our modal have absolute positioning in a fixed position. So even if the user would try to scroll on your page to get rid of the modal or something like that, like it would still be in the center of the page. So I'll show you how to do that. And then of course we have the button here that says close modal, and that'll close the modal. Okay, so this is just some simple JavaScript. This will be a great project for you to do just to get the hang of like selecting elements with JavaScript and manipulating the DOM. Now you notice that we have like a button that says close modal, but you can do the same thing. You can make like an X in the corner if you wanted to. It's all the same concept, guys. Just take the concepts that I'm showing you, and then you can apply it to whatever design you want, okay? So that's the finished product. Let's go ahead and get started and build the real thing. So I'm going to close out of this, and I'm going to create a new folder, and we'll just call it, I'll call it JS Modal. So we'll just say JS Modal. And let's go ahead and open Visual Studio Code. And let's get a new window open. And let's drag our JS Modal project in here. And let's get started by making an index.html. And then we'll need a style sheet, so we'll go style.css. And then we'll need a JavaScript, so we'll say index.js, okay? And let's get our boilerplate for HTML. I'm going to hit Shift exclamation tab. And we'll just name this JS Modal. Link our style sheet. I'm going to go above the title, type link, tab, put style.css in there. And then let's get our script, our JavaScript sheet connected here. So I'm going to make script tags, do our src for source, and we want index.js. So let's make an h1 here, and let's just call it vanilla JS Modal. And let's go ahead and go live. So let's minimize this. I'm going to open up our page that we're building, and we'll put them side by side. We'll watch it update as we build, okay? So first things first is I want to make sure that our CSS is connected. So let's go to our style sheet. I'm going to hit Shift 8. So that gives us the asterisk to select all. And I'm going to do a CSS reset to get rid of all the default margin and padding that Chrome is going to have on here. And then, oops, I want that border box. Okay. And then I want my font to be Arial. Sorry, font family to be Arial. Okay, that looks better. So we know our CSS is connected because our styles went through. And I want to make sure my JS is connected, my JavaScript. So I'm going to just do a quick alert to the page and say JS connected. And it is. So we're good to go there. It's always good practice, guys. Make sure your stuff, everything is hooked up correctly before you start coding, before you run into typos and issues that waste a bunch of time in the future, okay? All right, guys, so what we're going to do now is we're going to get started building the actual project. So I'm just going to go on my body here, and I'm going to make a div with an ID of content. This is just kind of going to be like a little container to put everything in. So I'll make sure my H1 is in there. Okay. And then let's go ahead beneath our H1. Let's just make a paragraph. and put some dummy text in here. So I'll just say like lorem 50. Okay. And then below that, let's make our button. And we're going to give this button an ID of read more button. So read more BTN. And then we're going to give it a class of BTN. And then underneath all of this, we're going to make our HTML for our modal. So it's going to be separate. We're going to have the modal just hanging out down here. And I'm going to make a div with the ID of modal. And then I'm also going to give it a class of display none. Okay. So we'll make that CSS class in a second, but for now we're just going to put it on there. And I'll show you what that's going to do. Let's make an H2 below here. And let's just say you opened the modal. And then let's go make a paragraph below here. We'll do some more dummy text. Say lorem 32. And then below here, we'll make another button. And we're going to give it an ID of close modal. I'll just say close modal BTN. And then we'll give it that same class of BTN because we'll style it with that. And then we'll just make the text say close modal. Okay. Oh, I forgot to put our text up here. So this one's going to say read more. There we go. All right, guys. So that's all of our HTML made. So let's go ahead and add some styles to this sheet so it looks a little bit better. It's not going to look super pretty, but it'll look good. First, I'm going to go to my body. And in the body, I'm just going to give this web page a height of 2,000 pixels so that we can, when we make our modal fixed, we'll make sure that that functionality works by scrolling around. And then I'm going to make another class that's going to give us that dark overlay when we click read more. We're just going to make a class and then add it to the body with JavaScript later. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to call it dark BG, dark background. And I'm just going to copy and paste this into the page because it's a little complicated code. I found this code somewhere online. I think like Stack Overflow. I didn't make this from scratch because I don't, like I always tell you guys, don't try to memorize all this stuff. Just try to find the answer to the problem when you need it. Okay. So anyway, this linear gradient black code here with the 0.9 and 0.9 at the end. What it does, that's going to give us that black overlay when we open the modal, okay? But for now, that's just going to hang out there. It's not going to do anything yet. What we could do, I could actually put it on the body just to show you what it's going to look like. So, say class dark BG, and see it gives you that overlay. So, I just did that manually, but we're going to add that class dynamically with JavaScript later on. Let's just say H1, or H1, let's do text align center and give it some margin top of 3 rem. There we go. And then below it, let's say the paragraph, we're going to give it a width of 70% just to make it, our paragraphs not extend all the way across the page. It looks kind of ugly. And then I want to give it some margin. So let's say margin top and bottom 2 rem. And then left and right auto, that'll center it. There we go. And then let's go ahead and do our styles for the buttons. So let's say .btn. Remember, we gave this btn class to both of our buttons, so these styles are going to carry over to both. Doing stuff like this, guys, it's a great way to write less code and have everything be like nice and uniform and organized. Just give the same elements, the same class if they're going to have the same styles. Okay. So let's say display block, because buttons I think are display inline by default and that messes up styling. So we'll say display block and then we'll center them. We'll say margin 0 auto, and then we want a cursor to show a pointer when we go over the buttons, like that. And then let's do height. We'll give them a height of 40 pixels and a width of 150 pixels and save. And there, now we got our buttons. So again, that's pretty cool. We styled both with just one class. Saved us a lot of time. Now let's get started on doing the modal here. So I'm going to select the modal. I'm going to say hashtag modal. And for our modal, we're going to do text align center. And then let's give it a border just so we can see the modal. Say border 2 pixels solid black. Okay. And then let's give it a width of, we'll say 400 pixels. And let's give it some padding of 2 rem top and bottom, 0 rem left and right. Let's give everything some padding there. And then we're going to say we want this to be, the position of this thing to be fixed. So wherever it is, it stays. So see now when we scroll up and down the page, it's still staying right in front of the user. That's what we want. And then let's go ahead and put this thing left 50%. And then we'll say top 50%. This is going to help position it in the center of the page. And then after that, we're going to do transform, translate. And then we'll say minus 50%, minus 50%. And that brings it up to the middle. Okay. So basically this top, left, top, and transform and translate, when combined like this, it'll center whatever you want, like in the middle of the page all the time. And then we combine that with the fixed property, and that'll keep it wherever you want it. So you can use that little bit of code for anything that you want to build in the future, not just modals. So let's make sure that our modal is always on top of everything. So let's just give it a z index of 2. And then we'll give it a, we'll go up here and we'll give it a background color of white. So we'll say hashtag FFF. Okay. And that should be it for as far as like styling everything. That should be it. So we're going to make this display none here in a second. And then we're going to add our JavaScript. So let's make 2 more classes that we're going to add dynamically with JavaScript to make this modal work. So the first one is going to be our .display none class. And we're just going to make the code in this say display none. So any element with this is going to have display none. And then we already added that display none class to our modal by default. So that's why when I hit save on our CSS, it displayed none. Okay. So that's good. That's out of the way. And then let's go ahead and make a display class so that we can actually display stuff. So let's say .display. And then we'll just say display block. So literally we're just doing the opposite of the display none class. And that should be all of the CSS we need. So we're almost there. So now let's just go ahead and make our JavaScript. So I'm going to hit right click and hit inspect and open my console. It's always a good idea to have your console open when you're going to write some JavaScript so that you can see your errors pop up if any happen. And then you can also test your code out as you go. So let's go ahead and go into our index.javascript and start coding everything up. So the first thing I'm going to grab onto is the body itself. So I'm going to say const body equals document dot, and we're going to use query selector because that allows us to just select the body without putting a class or ID on it. So there we go. We just selected the body. What else are we going to need? So we're going to need the body in the future so that we can put that class on it that has the dark overlay. Let's go ahead and grab our content. So our content is wrapped in this div right here, and it's got all the main content of the page. So let's say const content equals document dot get element by ID. And let's copy and paste it to make sure we don't have any typos, because sometimes you'll misspell your classes and ID names, and like even if you misspell them, you want the misspelled thing to be in here so that you it's still, your code still works. Let's get our read more button. So we'll say const. What we should do is just copy this down. Stop writing this out every time. So we'll grab the read more button, and that should be an ID as well. So let's just copy this. Okay. Grab onto our read more button. What else are we going to need? Let's select our modal itself. We're going to need to grab that. So let's just copy this down. And let's grab our modal. And I think it has an idea of modal. So yep, it does. Let's just grab that, put it in there. And then lastly, let's grab our close modal button. So let's copy this down. Say const. And we'll say close modal button. And let's grab this code here. Put it into our ID area for that one. And that should be all of the DOM elements that we need to grab. So we can even label these. Sometimes it's good to label your stuff. Let's just say DOM elements. Oops. So DOM elements. And then what we need to do first here, let's write out some pseudocode of what we need to do so that we get our mind straight and we know what we're doing. This helps out a lot whenever you're building projects. Write the step-by-step instructions out for yourself and then turn those instructions into code, okay? So what we want to happen is we'll just make a comment here and we'll say display modal on read more button click. So when we click, we want to display the modal. What else do we want to do? We want to add dark BG to body of the page. So we want to click this, display the modal, add that dark background, and then we want to put display none on content div. So that's basically what we want to do now. We want to display the modal on the read more button click. So we got to add an event listener and a function to do that. And then after we do that, we want to add the dark background, and then we want this to display none, and then we want to display our div, or display our modal. So put display modal. Okay? So just little simple notes or instructions to yourself. This helps out a lot. So let's go ahead and let's start executing that now. So let's go to, let's grab our button, so our read more button. So let's just say, let's make another comment here and say event listeners. Okay. And then we'll say read more button dot add event listener. And we want this to happen on a click. And then we're going to make a function and we'll just call it open modal. And then let's go down here and we'll say this is our functions area. And I realize, guys, and you might be asking yourself, like, why are you naming a function and writing it down here instead of just making the function here? It's a lot easier. If you're newer to JavaScript, I recommend taking the long way on everything and skipping the shortcuts, just so you really hammer down everything into your brain about how the concepts work with JavaScript and how everything works. When you become more advanced, go ahead and take all the shortcuts you want, but really explicitly, like, name functions, write everything out. Don't do the shorthand for everything, because I feel like that's harder to understand, especially when you're new. Okay, so just a little tip. So let's make our function now. Let's say function open modal, and then let's do those steps that we wanted to happen. So the first thing I'm actually going to do is I'm going to add the dark background to the body. So let's just say body, because remember, we already selected the body up here with query selectors. We can say body dot class list dot add parentheses quotations. So this is very similar to what we did up here to select the elements. Okay, pretty much the same syntax. And we want to add the class of dark BG. So let's go grab it over here. Make sure we don't have a typo. Let's copy and paste it. We're going to put it in there without the dot and save. And let's see if that worked. And we should also do a console.log really quick to make sure our button is working, our event listener. Probably should have done that first. So let's comment this out and make sure that our button is actually working on command. We should get a message here in the console that says button clicked if it is. Okay, so it is. So that's good. So we know that's working. We selected that correctly. Now let's see if this dark background will happen on button click. And it did. So perfect. There's one thing out of the way. All right, the second thing that we want to do, guys, is we want this main content to disappear. So let's say content.classlist.add, and it should be the display none class that we want to add to it. So we get it out of here. Okay. So let's see if that works now. So let's click read more. Boom, and it displayed none. So cool. So that disappeared, and we got our dark overlay. So we're about halfway there. Now we want to make our modal appear. So let's say modal dot class list, and this time we're going to say dot remove, not add. We're going to remove a class list, and we should be removing this display none class list that's on there by default. So let's get rid of that, and that should make it appear. Save. All right, let's see. Read more. Boom, there's our modal. You open the modal, we got our dummy text, and now we just have one problem, and that's our close modal button doesn't do anything. So our close modal should basically revert the whole page back to normal and get rid of this. This should disappear. All the content should come back, and this dark overlay should go away. So to do that, what do we need to do? Well, basically the same thing that we just did. We're going to add an event listener onto our close modal button. We're going to make a function, and we're going to have all the same code in here, but we're going to have it do the opposite of what it does in open modal. So let's get that done. So let's say close modal button dot add event listener. And if you think you got this, guys, go ahead and pause the video and do it yourself and see if you can get it. Okay? So let's go click, and then we'll make a function called close modal. Save, and let's go down here. We'll say function close modal. Okay, so we got our close modal function. I'm literally just going to copy this code because we're really just going to be modifying all the same stuff. So instead of adding the dark background, we want to remove it, and then we want to remove display none on our content. And then we want to add the display none back to our modal. So literally those three changes should make everything work. Let's see. Click read more. There's our modal. Okay, here's your information. Cool. Let's say we want to close it. Oh my, there you go. It worked. So let's make this full screen. And that's it, guys. That's how you make modals. So pretty common feature on things. You don't have to use complicated frameworks or anything like that to make this happen. You can literally just use some vanilla JavaScript, and it takes, honestly, if I was doing this by myself without teaching you guys, this would be like 5 minutes or less. It's really fast, and it's a good skill, okay? So take this concept over to whatever project you may be building and follow the same steps, and you'll be making modals in no time, all right? Thank you so much for watching the video. All of the code for this will be out down in the description, so make sure you check that out if you want to look at the GitHub code, and I will see you in the next video.